Welcome to AstroChat with Anne Sundell Kimberly Williams and Monika Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Okay, so we are recording, so this time it'll all make it here. This is, as you said, this is so strange. We're so caught in the Aries energy.
Yeah, this is really hilarious and strange at the same time. We actually did a whole podcast recording without recording. This is so Aries energy. I mean, we're Aries New Moon, Aries Sun ingressing, and we just hit and go without thinking what we're doing, and we're not recording the whole podcast.
Yeah. So an hour and 20 minutes, guys, of what we think about this upcoming new moon is out there, but not recorded. So now you're going to get our thoughts take 2, but it's probably going to be a little bit shorter because we're going at it again.
Yeah, but this is quite good tip for this week. We can start with the tip because you do your plan and you do it once and then you see did this work and redo it again. I mean,
yeah,
just the plan again. Yeah, like we do.
Okay, so here we go. Take 2. Welcome to another AstroChat. Today it's me and Anne. You may notice Monika's not with us. She's off on vacation. So I hope it is going well and fun, and we will see her in 2 weeks when we come back together again. But for today, we're going to be talking about the new moon in Aries, which is happening on the 21st. And we're going to be looking at the 2-week window between that new moon and the full moon. I think that's April 6th. So depending on where you live, assuming I've got daylight savings times correct in my head, because we're all having it at different times or not having it, I believe that on March 21st, we're going to have the new moon 12:23 in the afternoon here in Central Time, USA. So high noon for those of us in Texas. 5:23 p.m. over in England, 7:23 over in Finland. We'll all be meeting on the same day to celebrate this International Astrology Day, Spring Equinox, Aries New Moon. All of this is happening right kind of on the heels of each other. So for the sake of this podcast, we're kind of going to look at everything as one big, huge conglomerate of energy of Aries. Anne, you want to talk about the Sabian symbol?
Yeah, it's nice. It's the Sabian symbol Aries 1 degree. So we have a woman just rising from the sea, and she's embraced by a seal. So it's all about looking at the consciousness of being an individual, and I think it's so symbolic with that Neptune in Pisces and Aries energy that we're embracing from the sea, and we're going towards this plan we're going to have and this new adventure.
That's gorgeous. That makes me think about the myth of the Selkies, who are women that could change from seal to human and back, and that flow of energy between being part of the collective ocean and being an individual self. And I think we're going to see a lot of the individual self coming forward in this chart. So let's just look at the idea of a moon in Aries, specifically the new moon that we get each year in Aries. It isn't always happening on or so close to the spring equinox, right? Because the lunar cycle and the solar cycle differ a bit. But it's really interesting to see that just as the sun is in Aries and we have that outer world experience of what are we going to start, what is new. One of the common images we associate with Aries is the little plant pushing up, the little daffodil, the spring flowers, at least in the northern hemisphere, pushing through the snow and the earth and hitting the sun, and that energy and that drive. We're now seeing it in our inner world, our lunar world, on that soul level as well. So what is it that I've been yearning to start, to initiate, to launch into, to bring forward, is kind of there. It's echoing the inner and the outer, which I think is kind of spectacular to have that this year. When the moon is in Aries, it is very much an emotional response or experience of, what about me, myself, and I? Is that something I'm comfortable, expressing and being and doing, or is that something I've been taught or conditioned to hold back? There's something about the Aries energy about starting and starting up, launching, initiating, doing things that are new, that are exciting, hopefully doing them now. I think Aries is most comfortable living in the present moment. It's not being held back by what happened or didn't happen before, or the fears of what might follow. It's living in the moment and doing it here and now. So this is a great time for us to be experiencing abundance of Aries energy in this chart at this time, because it's really been a long 2-3 years of not being able to rush forward and be spontaneous and impulsive the way we'd like, with all of the different restrictions that many of us have endured in our different cultures from COVID and things of that nature. So here's sort of a rebirth, a return to, what do I want? What do I want to start? What am I doing? What is my fire? Where am I expressing it, putting it out there? And how do I feel about all of that? There's so much more that could be said, and so much more that probably was said in the last hour and a half, but I'm going to stop right there and just keep it short and quick. And that's kind of my thinking on my synopsis of this moon in Aries. Anne, any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, well, this time is starting the whole Western astrological year. I mean, it's the first sign, it's Aries, we're approaching a new year astrologically. Also, I think about what Martin Schulman wrote about Aries, because with astrology, it's so much connected to the farmer's almanac, to how people were connected to the seasons. And it's not that far away. It's like our grandparents or parents' times more, but we have disconnected so much from this. So astrology is not so strange at all. It's really like about the seasons, about living with the seasons. And with Aries, Martin Schulman described Aries as a sign that was the one who got the seeds to plant, to had to go out and find the spots for planting the new seeds, not being able always to stay there and watch them grow, but to start something new, to have the courage to do that, and also to be the pioneer in that area. And I feel that Aries, that's sometimes called also the baby of the zodiac, like the first one that's really taking the initiative to do this, and with that fire energy and maybe sometimes very impulsive energy, give it the start, and also give enthusiasm to other people to follow, but not maybe always the one that can stay and look at what will be the result of the plan.
Yeah, we have a myth over here about Johnny Appleseed, one of the urban legends, planting apple trees across the country and kept going. And it's not about being present to see it through and to bring it to completion, but about launching and starting. And it takes a certain kind of energy and attitude and bravery and boldness to be sometimes the person who initiates, who starts things up. That's often not the person who's around 20 years later to see things through or bring them to conclusion. And we know that the idea of completing something isn't necessarily the Aries energy. It's much more about the energy of starting, of pushing through, of, what's beginning. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And we have a lot of that in this chart.
We do. Let me pull up the chart so people can see it. Okay, we're ready to go. All right, so here we are. If you're watching, feel free to follow along with our chart. If you're listening to us, we're looking at a chart for March 21st of this year, set to 5:23 p.m. Greenwich, England. Just to keep it kind of generic, feel free to set one to where you live and see, how these energies are hitting you specifically in your geographic area too. So Anne, start us off with all that, talking about all that Aries energy.
So we have the Sun and the Moon at 0049 Aries, and Sun has ingressed into Aries, and with them we have also Mercury, we have Chiron, and we have Jupiter that's residing in the sign of Aries. So we have a stellium. We have a lot of different energies that's really packed together here. So it's kind of really like I think you call it like laser beam effect somehow earlier, and that also, of course, gives us a boost of fire energy, and this might be very good. I mean, this might bring the enthusiasm, the courage, the urgency of starting up something, of going forward. Still, also with Aries, it's a lot about me. It's a lot about my journey. Where am I going? And it might be the backside of it might be that we forget that we actually have other people we need to talk to and to plan together with, and we are maybe rushing a bit with this energy. And as I said also in our previous podcast that was not recorded, that we might burn ourselves out a bit with that energy. The fire is so enthusiastic, and it might make you really much want to concentrate on just doing that thing so much that you forget about the rest of the world, really. So this might be the backside of having this much fire in a chart, but it's actually you can actually see how different we throughout the podcasts we haven't had so much of the fire energy like concentrated very much in the chart. So now we really have a concentration here.
Yeah. And I think if we're concentrating the fire in our lives, if it's all this startup energy towards a thing we want to start, that can be great. That can be powerful. There's nothing worse than trying to literally build a physical fire and it won't get started. Your wood is wet. You know how much energy that can take. So if all that energy is concentrated in one thing, which could happen because with the stellium, it's affecting you in one house in your chart. It's affecting one part of the sky. Well, that's great. But the flip side is what happens if I'm starting this and I'm starting this and I'm starting all these many mini fires and I'm having to run from one to the other to keep them going and to keep them from going out. That can be exhausting. And I think that is also quite probable here. And I'm just going to step forward a bit and mention the fact that Jupiter, as you were alluding to, Jupiter is not aspected. Right? Jupiter is in the stellium of Aries, but it's way over at 16 degrees. Technically, it's not having a conversation with those things at the very beginning of Aries. It's by itself. It doesn't make any other aspects other than a wide conjunction to Chiron, the asteroid. So no planetary aspect. So it's unaspected. And that means that, like you were saying, Anne, this laser beam of energy can come through. When Jupiter is unaspected, it's like, I think you called it a wild card. That's really how I would see it. It's unaspected planets. Often it's hard to connect with them, to feel their energy, to draw it down. Here, it's in a sign of Aries. It doesn't need help drawing down. It's going to blast through, but very specific. So I think there's a wide range of things that could happen. My caution is that if we're doing too many things, too fast, too furious, all at once, if our energy is like a person speeding on the highway, we got to put the pedal to the metal and go, go, go. We're not thinking things through. We're doing the podcast and not hitting the record button. We're going through life. We're driving in the car and we run through the red light. We're working on contracts and not looking at the details. It's just go, go, go too much. And the other thing is Jupiter, being the last planet in this stellium, isn't really concerned with the body, with limitations. Jupiter wants to teach us to say yes to life. Saturn's responsible for teaching us to say no. Jupiter's like, say yes, let's do more, let's do more. So the more we feel that we're starting something new, we may not think about, I just started 10 other new things, and do I have the energy for this? And if Aries, as we've already alluded to and mentioned here, it's about the startup. It's not about the carry through. But if I'm starting something up, do I have someone to delegate this to so that I don't have to be around in 8 months to follow it through? If so, I might not want to start up so many things. So physical exhaustion, burnout, being excited that we're finally not burnt out, apathetic in a holding pattern can be wonderful. It can be freeing. But if we start too many things, then 8 months from now, we're going to be in burnout again. So just be aware of that. The other thing with all this Aries energy, and especially with Jupiter in Aries, there's the potential here for not just starting something new, but being initiated into something totally new. So we might find ourselves on a new path, or meeting a mentor or a guide, or something that feels more like it's not just something I'm adding to my repertoire. I'm developing a new tool for my toolbox, as they like to say. It's I'm starting something new that's really going to change the course of my life. And that can be really wonderful and exciting, but also difficult to juggle, especially if we're having to juggle what we are starting with others. Because all this energy is about me and what I want and myself, which is so important. But if we don't balance it with how will that impact how much time I have for others, or how I expect others to compensate for what I'm now doing, and that can create some of the around this lunation.
Yeah, and always when a lot of energy is concentrated in one place, it's good to look at the other side, like the Libra side of it. Like, what are we lacking here? We're not having the balance that we need to have. Also, in this chart, we just have one planet in air signs. So we have Mars in Gemini, and Mars is still out of bounds. It's been retrograding for a long time. So we having a very strong also aspect between Mars and the Moon, this new moon. So we're having a square. So this can also make it like more urgent with dealing with the mental energy and the objectivity of things. And also when we're going into like, this is a good mode maybe for brainstorming, for get the party started, for seeing, maybe writing down all those ideas and things I want to do, I'm enthusiastic about, but not starting them all at once. Just like making a list or trying to get that air energy into the planning part of. I mean, you can't go out and just throw the seeds everywhere. You have to know where you're going to plant something or how you're going to do it. So this is one urgent thing. I think that air is not. It's a bit lacking in this chart.
It is lacking, and where we do see it with that Mars is also, it's a really strong, powerful Mars. So it's like all this air is coming in this very small tunnel, which can really blow a person down, right? It's a lot of force to it, but not a lot of variety, as it were. Mars is out of bounds, like you said. Mars is in the last 2 degrees of Gemini when planets are in 28 and 29 degrees. Those are considered pretty critical degrees. It's the end of a sign. The planet is pushing us to learn what we needed to learn and didn't, to wrap up what was begun and not finished. All of that, like, we got to get it done before we ingress into the next sign. And traditionally, 28 and 29 degrees, they're given rulership by Saturn and Mars, the malefics. So, I mean, these are hard degrees. And you just kind of had this layer cake effect of layer upon layer upon layer of what is making this what I think of as a very pushy Mars. It's coming in, and this is the Gemini mission, is a mission that needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Boom. And it's squaring and challenging all of that Aries. So I think of the analogy in my head with this is, if you've created a small fire and then you start to take the bellows and add all that air into it, and suddenly that fire can just go from really small to really huge very quickly. So there's a certain amount of rapidity here. Rapidness is a big thing, I think, with this lunation. We've been in slow mode and at times feeling like we were in reverse for so long. And now we're shifting gears and not just going forward, which feels good, but that forward's going to pick up momentum really, really fast. Zoom. So I think that makes it very volatile, and in ways that can be exciting, all those Aries ways that we talked about beginning things, but also it can make it very volatile in terms of not seeing the big picture. Gemini is really focused on the microcosm, the details, the what's happening. Its opposite sign of Sagittarius wants to have the long view, the big picture view. So here it could really be the I'm concerned with what I can do. So I think that the challenge here could be trying to do everything on our own, not just about what I want to start, but it's I have to do it. It's mine. I will do it. I will be responsible. I'm going to do all the work. And as a result, if we get too much into I mentality, we lose we, the collective, the us, right? That Libra side. And this could be kind of pushing that we got blinders on and we're only seeing what's right in front of us and what's happening right now in the present, and not taking the long view of, well, which of these seeds are going to grow and who's going to tend them when they start to sprout, and how much energy will it take, and what resources do I have, and maybe doing things a little more collectively with others, or at least having spaces where people could come in to help and support might be really useful, as opposed to just making it about me and kind of trying to push what we want through instead of tending to what we want to grow. There could be some challenges around how all that works.
These planets also make some interesting aspects to the South Node in Scorpio. They're making some quincunx aspects, and with this, it's also related quite much to health and to health astrology. And with Aries, the ruling thing in the body is the head. And also with fire energy, it's about burning the fire out too fast, to using too much of that energy. So we can also think that it's good to be a bit cautious with, like, if you're very stressed and you're in a hurry and you might hit yourself, or you might have a small accident because you're not looking careful enough, or you might get a migraine from stress, or headaches, or things like that for having too high a tempo on. So this might be things also that connects to this new moon.
Yeah. Practicing mindfulness could be really beneficial during the week leading up to and following this new moon. That idea of pulling us out of the rush, go, pedal to the metal drive, and pulling us back into the present, that other, which is also an Aries trait, that being mindful of this moment and this, what's happening right now, not the 800 things I need to start and get ready and going, but where am I right now? What is the action, the task, the project I'm looking at now? And letting the others kind of fall into place as I get to them. And I agree with you so much that the fact that there's a quincunx happening here, and that it's to the node, and that's to the south node specifically, gives me a moment for pause, because I feel like this is very much associated with health and health issues, this particular aspect in, as you said, in medical astrology. And when it's the south node, it's the what am I needing to release and let go of? What is the past? What are the skills I've learned that I need to keep, that I need to sift out from everything else? And then how do I let everything else go? So there's layers involved with working with the south node. I think it'd be easier if it was just letting it all go, but it's not. And we've talked at length, right, for the last year now about the south node in Scorpio, all the aspects that it has been making with different eclipses and lunations. This idea of there's still that little something about our fear, about stepping into the new future. There's that little something about the need for control or self-control, that we're afraid to totally let go of. If we truly allow the old self to die off, and so the new self can be born, as it were, what's going to happen? I don't know what that new self is yet. I don't know how I'm going to sustain it in this world. Like, there's questions, and those questions quickly become fears. And so there's been a lot of work we've been doing this last year about releasing those last little tendrils, cord cutting around those things. And as we approach this, it's all new, Aries, new moon, I'm feeling that perhaps this is saying, if we're doing the work of letting go, then we're also doing the work of stepping forward. And if I take that first step into what I don't know about, because pretty soon we're going to have the north node moving into Aries, and it's all going to be Aries energy. So this could be that little, can I take that first baby step forward? And I'm working with the energy in spite of those fears, and realizing what I need to release, what's holding me back maybe from that step. great, we're doing the work. If we're not, if we're ignoring it or repressing it or pushing it into a skeleton closet, I think that creates the kind of stress that can exacerbate anything physical. And that's why we often see that the physical issues may have already been present, but they surface for us during these kind of quincunx aspects, because it's now that stress is coming to the surface in a physical form. So I think it's a really good time for, was it an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? Look at what we need to do. And the 3 nights before this new moon, while the moon is in her balsamic phase, would be a great time to really kind of just review, what have I been working on letting go of, and what am I still need to do? What is the step forward I'm resistant, hesitant, scared to take, and how can I maybe step into it instead of creating 15 things to start? What's that one powerful step I need to take?
Yeah, and also with Mars, like fevers and inflammations is also a sign that the Mars energy is maybe not in balance, and to find the balance also with that Jupiter that's not making aspects, also with another planet that's not making aspects, which it is Uranus, that can take you by surprise, as it did with us today. So we might have also a few turns with those 2 planets. We need to find a balance, and it might become more of a restlessness that's hard to like know, because they're not limited by aspects, but they're kind of more raw and authentic in their energy in that way.
Yes, and definitely challenging us to be flexible, to move out of the things will not go according to plan. I find that while Uranus has been transiting in Taurus, that's so indicative, but here it's like not aspected, so expect that even more, that the unexpected will happen and pull us off plan. I think is very key there. And of course, we've talked about Uranus and Taurus a lot, but I think the fact that it's unaspected now, as opposed to all those aspects that have happened, might mean that there's some kind of breakthrough that needs to happen around this lunation. And we also have Venus up there next, close to Uranus. Venus is in Taurus, sign that she rules, and she's right on top of the North Node. And I think you were mentioning earlier, Anne, that this could be really key with relationships.
Yeah, I think so, and also it can be a kind of a crisis time in relationship. Also internal, like think about what's this new me in the relationship, what's the new plan, I'm where am I heading right now, and what's my value system, like what have been worked on with the Scorpio and Taurus nodes the last years, and there might be like a new system of values that have been, which one is most important right now, and that might have changed over the few years. So to take that also with and see how it works within relationships, and how do my new plans work with the people around me, and how do I feel that I want to do self-love, and I wanna experience this new time together with other people. And I think with Venus and Taurus, it can be also a very good time to really take care of your body and maybe spoil yourself a bit in that area if you're very hectic and your life is very, or together with your partner, to just have a bit of romantic time together, because we have also like Aries, we have 2 stubborn signs here. We have Aries stubbornness and we have Taurus stubbornness to combined. So it's a lot of that energy also in this chart.
Yeah. And I think for those not in relationship, this can be a great time to start thinking about the relationships we want to form, right? With Venus on the North Node, how do I form relationship? But it's going to require that we take some initiative with all this Aries energy, and that we're looking for, valuing ourselves and finding people who value those things that we value about ourselves as well. I love the fact that not only is Venus on the North Node, and not only is she only in her sign of rulership, but she's got a nice out of sign sextile with Mars, and then a sextile going on with Saturn, who's just recently entered Pisces. We talked about that a lot 2 weeks ago. So if you're curious to know more, go back and listen to that episode. But these two planets have historically been called the malefics, right? They get a bad rap. They are sometimes hard energies to work with, not always, but I think when they're working together in harmony, it's like we get the best of both worlds. Mars is I want to do it now. Let's take some action. And let's just go, and we'll just go forward and we'll deal with the mistakes as they occur. Saturn, on the other hand, is let's make sure that action leads us to another action that can lead us to another action. So let's have a plan that will support and be a framework for those actions. And sometimes if we're all one and not the other, we get tripped up. If we're all action and no plan, as I've said before, as you said before, we start recording and don't hit the record button. And, those kind of things happen in our life on a bigger scale that have more repercussions. So when they're together, it's like you're getting this beautiful energy of both. And so there's a little bit of stop and go that can happen, but it's all hitting Venus. So really, I think the key here is, what do I desire in my life? She's on the North Node. What am I desiring in my life? What are my values about? What are my resources? How do I want to put that forward? And then, okay, let's pass that baton to Aries. What actions will we take to make it happen? But that means that I need to be willing to act. And I also need to be willing to take the time to figure out a plan and work with that, as opposed to just thinking about only, one step after another. So if you're in that period of every day feels like it's feeding into the next day, and we feel like we're in that movie Groundhog Day, this is a great time to break out of that, and really start seeing or creating or cultivating a future based on what we're yearning. So I just think that's a lovely placement for Venus.
Absolutely, and we still have the nodes a few degrees in Scorpio and Taurus. We still have Pluto that's squaring, so we have time to go through those last finalizing things with those nodes.
Yes, yeah. And speaking of Pluto, Pluto will be shifting soon, at least for a little bit. It is going to be coming up on the 23rd. So on the 23rd of this month, Pluto is going to leave Capricorn and ingress into Aries. But while we're waiting for that to happen, take a look here. And Pluto at 29 of Capricorn is also making a quincunx to that Mars that we were talking about at 28 of Gemini. And so there's something here about, it's a great time to take action, to push past what we are afraid of. If we were afraid of, I want to create some new mountaintop that I want to climb, that I want to get to, that I see that as a structure in my world, whether that's changing government or whether that's creating our own startup or becoming the CEO of some company, whatever the mountain is that we've been wanting to climb and the fears we have about not being able to reach that summit. I think with this quincunx, we can start taking some adjustments about, well, maybe I can take some steps in that direction that have more impact and are bigger. So yay, we get to wrap that up. And then she moves into Aquarius, and she'll be in Aquarius from the end of this month until the middle of June. We'll see a little bit of a retrograde start before then, but really June's when she'll have been in Aquarius and then back up again and go back into these last 3 degrees of Capricorn for the remainder of the year. So sort of that, what we've been experiencing and are experiencing now, we get to step out of that a little and start thinking about the future. And what is the future that I want to build? And what are my fears around that? And how will we transform? And then we kind of come back to do the final leg of this work, I guess, as it were. And I feel like when Pluto's getting ready to shift signs, it takes such a long time. We're looking at decades for Pluto to shift into a new sign. It can be intimidating to think about what we're stepping into, and all the fears around that start to, surface. But it can also be useful to look at where we've been. What happened during this last journey of this sign? We may see there were moments of pain and of crisis, but there was also growth and transformation. And transformation's a word that I think we use a lot, sometimes overused with Pluto, but it's very apropos. The transformation is messy and it's painful. The caterpillar doesn't want to die off and become goo. And goo doesn't have much of a consciousness to know it's becoming a butterfly. And before the butterfly has wings, it has to painfully push its way out of that cocoon. There are steps along this process that are not so pretty and are difficult, and we might want to run for the hills from. But at the end, we wind up in a better place than we began. The transformational journey with Pluto, I believe, is always worth the amounts of pain and suffering that go along with it. And there's joy and there's great experience that happens too. It's just sometimes we focus more on the negative than the positive. So before we start jumping into the Pluto's in Aquarius and my world is being turned upside down, let's look at what has happened. What were the lessons learned? What mountains did we not climb? And really now we don't care because they weren't part of our goals to begin with. They didn't represent our authentic self. Maybe they were conditioned. And what about some of the things we did learn in the journey of climbing those mountains, those obstacles we had to overcome? What did we learn about ourselves? How have we been empowered? Let's embrace that and celebrate that and take that forward into now we get to be a lot more of our authentic being more of the time. Because I think we all tap into that authenticness, but it's hard to express it everywhere all the time. And I think as Pluto goes into Aquarius, we're going to have a lot more opportunities. So here's 2 months, give or take, to really kind of reflect on what has been and start to get a little pre-shadow of what it'll be like next year in January when Pluto is done with the retrograde and ingresses back into Aquarius again.
Absolutely. It's important to also understand that these sagas are very long. So this thing is, and the change is not happening overnight. And it's nothing that we have to be afraid of. But with Pluto, it might be hard to grasp the themes. It might be easier to do it in retrospect by going to your chart, checking where have my Pluto been doing the journey throughout my life, and what years has it been in different houses and so on, reforming planets. And by doing that, you might get another kind of picture of it.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to stop sharing the chart and then we can go into our tips and tricks unless you have other things you want to say about anything here. So let me just stop sharing. And all right, why don't you go ahead? You had a great tip and trick. Why don't you start us off?
My tip for this week will be to sleep on your decisions. And you don't need to start all those ideas at the new moon day. You can wait. And you talked about, Kimberly, about the crescent phase of the moon, that it's better to do it, to put things into action. So do the brainstorming, maybe write it down, and then let it wait. And then see what you feel about it after some time. Yeah.
In baking world, I'm just now starting to learn about baking breads. And in the baking world, it's like, you put the yeast in and then you need to let it proof. You need to let it sit and it will grow and it will rise and it'll be more than it was before. So yeah, I kind of keep thinking about that lately with a new moon to crescent as my period to let things sit and rise and proof. My tip is get yourself a copy of, let's see if I put it here. The book is out. Monika Anna's new book, the Astro-Luna journal. It's out. It's print. I just got my copy. I was so excited. If you live in the States, you can get it through Amazon, or you can go to the link she has and find out how you can get it. If you're a person who likes to journal and likes to reflect, it's perfect. I'm going to launch mine on the new moon in Aries by journaling about that new moon energy and see where it takes me over the course of a year. So just doing a little shout out for Monika since she's not here to do it herself. And that's, and I echo what Anne said, let's enjoy all this Aries energy, but not feel the pressure to have to act on every single new idea simultaneously. Yeah. All right. So I think that is our wrap up. That is a 40-minute fast and furious, how appropriate, overview on the Aries new moon. And I hope it's useful for everyone. Please put in the comments below over the next 2 weeks, how are you experiencing all of this? Are you on fire? Are you busy putting out fires? How is this energy moving for you? Love to hear and know more about it. And we will be back by the 6th of April to talk about the next full moon.
Thank you for following our channel.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in this week's AstroChat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.